was when we're
You
on.
ask the questions then.
No, I want to start.
Yeah.
Are we on?
You're on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, before we get started, I want to just share a few fun things recently.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
with this COVID thing. Well, we got vaccinated, you know, and I came home from my second shot, and I came in the house and I said, my wife came and said, how'd it go? And I said, well, fine. I said, kissing spreads germs, it has been stated. But kiss me, babe, I've been vaccinated.
So I did.
I love it.
And then one of our children
Well, we have two of our children
are expecting.
Oh.
and
yeah.
so they're thinking of names and things.
Yeah, and I was, so we're willing to suggest, and so I thought it would be nice to have some names that would kind of be indicative of this beautiful period of time in which we live and everything, and so I suggested to our son a couple names, and I thought, wouldn't it be? I said these are beautiful names. It has a little bit of a French flair, Sachal, and then the middle name would be Distance, spelled SOCIALDISTANCE. Wouldn't that be neat? And they could have a sister named
Quarantine.
Quarantina. So we've had a lot of fun
I
with
love it.
COVID.
With this beautiful
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
that we live in.
Yeah,
Oh
it
my.
is.
Okay, well, ask us a question.
Well, first of all, this is Tom and Susan Nelson. Fantastic couple. Born in Paradise, Tom.
No.
Oh no, darn. Well, we'll have to. We will learn about this, but they are we could call you longtime Paradise residents.
Yes, you
Maybe.
could, because we've lived here 3 different times
Oh, there
in
you
our
go.
married life, so
Yeah,
we just always keep coming back home.
that's right.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Fort Sill, Oklahoma
Okay.
during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
My dad,
yes.
yeah, and this
Ask
is
me
a
that.
picture of in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, when shortly after I was born. But within the first year of
So beautiful.
my life, we moved out to Granger.
The war ended.
The war had ended, and my dad had sent some money home to his dad, my grandfather, and he bought 25 acres of land and a house. And so we moved out to Granger, and my mother just wept when she saw the home her father-in-law had purchased.
Right.
There was no indoor plumbing,
Oh,
and
The bank wouldn't even loan money.
no, it was an old Adobe
I was
house.
old enough that
Yeah, but my dad had enough money that they paid cash for it, and so had a few barns on it. We milked some cows,
yeah.
sold the milk back then
Wow.
to
See.
various customers. It was just raw milk,
Yeah.
and so that was the first 11 years of my life, and it was during the polio epidemic,
Right.
and I got polio.
Wow.
Bulbar, which attacks the lungs,
Okay.
and spent I don't know. I spent over a month in the hospital, and I just remember certain things. I just remember children everywhere. They had bunk beds in the hospital,
Oh man.
just full of children with polio, and I spent I'm not sure how long because I kind of was delirious, but they put me in an iron lung
Oh my
and
word.
put
Wow.
did a tracheotomy. And
How old were you then? Were you
I was 7.
7? Oh my goodness.
And I was pretty well dead.
Yeah.
They rolled me in a room and they needed the iron lung for some other children, and they rolled 3 of us were in iron lungs, and they rolled us in this one room. The other 2 died
Oh my
during
goodness.
the night, but my aunt, who was a nurse, she says, "Don't you dare unhook that iron lung. That boy is not going to die." Well, I made it through the night.
And she stayed there through.
She stayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was a nurse
Uh-huh.
and started to recover
Wow.
and made it. So that was kind of a traumatic thing in my earlier life, and
Yeah.
then they came out with the vaccine. There were a bunch of kids that were crippled
Yeah. Right.
during that time, and a number of them died. But then they haven't came out with the Salk vaccine, and even though I'd had polio, I remember eating the sugar cubes,
Oh.
and that's how it
Oh, to
started.
get the vaccine, really? Okay.
Yeah, they'd put it on a sugar cube. They'd come into school and have us all eat sugar cubes.
Wow. And it would, yeah, an interesting disease. It would attack different parts because President Packer had it, and it was like his foot or something.
Yeah, and it would cripple the legs, and it would attack, yeah, like you say, attack certain parts, and it hit my lungs,
Right.
and that was pretty deadly.
Yeah. Have you had any sort of like breathing issues since, or?
No, I have some mental issues, but probably not.
Not breathing. Well, that's fantastic. Sheesh.
But I have to share with you one thing. We moved up here in '56,
Uh-huh.
up here to Paradise. My dad worked at the post office
In Salt Lake.
in Salt Lake City, and he hated it,
Oh, okay.
and he wanted to farm.
Uh-huh.
So that little place we had down in Granger where they were subdividing, and he sold that,
Yeah.
that 25-acre piece, and bought 127 acres up here. House and barn, which is the farm now,
Sheesh. So cool.
for
Yeah.
$27,000.
Oh boy. Wow.
We should have bought a lot more than that. House, barns, and 127 acres.
Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah. But at any rate, I was 11 years old when we moved up here, and it was maybe I was 12. I can't remember, but my brother and I. My dad was asleep, and we decided we would. It was a Sunday.
Uh-huh.
And we decided that we would go hunting. So we snuck the 22
Uh-huh.
out of the house, went down to the river to shoot a few ducks. I hope I don't get put in prison for saying this. But, well, you can't really hit ducks with a 22, and we pretty well shot all our bullets, and then it was toward the end, the last few bullets, and we threw the box in the river, and it was floating down the river, and I was holding a big German Shepherd dog that we had, and because it would get real excited when we shoot,
Right.
and that dog lunged,
Oh no.
and in the meantime, my brother was here, I was here, and the box was floating down the river, and then the river made a turn, and as I lunged, he shot, and it caught me in the back of the neck,
Oh.
and went up through my throat, and lodged right here in my head, and I was fortunate to live through that, and Travis is our dentist,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Travis.
Yes.
And he wanted to take a full X-ray of my thing.
Right.
And all of a sudden, this big shiny thing comes up in my right up here in my head. He says, "What on earth is that?" It's a bullet.
Oh, and it's wow.
It's still
just
there.
chilling. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Oh my goodness.
Holy smokes.
So at any rate, I had a few near
Oh yeah. Holy cow.
near death types experiences, but I've recovered for the most
Made it.
part.
So, that one caused a tiny bit of mental.
That's what caused the mental, not the polio.
Oh, do you have that 3-year-old picture too? I'll show them. that.
Yes.
That is so beautiful. These photos are magnificent. How about you, Susan? Tell us about.
And then there's a,
See the resemblance? That's Tom right there. Boom, boom. See?
if you can just show that picture, that's Tom's family. When,
Oh yeah. When they moved up here, about that? No, he's
No,
younger
No,
there.
that's later. Because, well, I don't
No.
know. But Lee is the one that's the little boy sitting on the parent's lap.
Is Tom? Which one should I point to? Are you in the middle
No,
there?
Tom is this
Oh,
one.
the
Yeah.
oldest.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. There's Tom.
And point out Lee too, because everybody knows him.
And Lee is right here.
Yeah, there's,
We will interview him soon. Lee, you're coming up. Okay.
okay.
So Susan, where were you born then?
I was actually born in Logan,
Oh,
but my dad was going to school at Utah State, and I was born the very end of January, and in May he graduated
Oh wow.
and got a job in Illinois with Armor Star and Company. So when I was 4 months old, we moved to Illinois, and
Right.
then I stayed in Illinois till I was 17.
Wow.
So that's where, and we first lived in the central part of Illinois until I was maybe 3 or 4. Then we moved up to Chicago, and because they
Okay.
switched them to the office up there, and so
But like right
So-
downtown, big city,
yeah,
Chicago.
yeah, he
Wow.
was downtown. We lived in a
So
suburb.
you were a city girl then.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I was definitely a city girl. I did not ever think I would marry a farmer. In fact, if you're raised in a city, that's kind of the joke is you would never want to marry a country bumpkin.
Right, right.
And
She
my
did.
mother had me pretty well convinced not to marry a
Not to
farmer.
do it, right.
So when I was going to school at Utah State, if I had a date and he was majoring in agriculture, I wouldn't go out with him again.
Oh my goodness.
But
That's awesome.
he was majoring in education, so I didn't ever
Ah, he
realize
snuck under there.
until he decided to bring me home to meet his parents, and he picked me up and after church one Sunday, and we started driving and we left the city limits, and I said, "So I thought you lived in Logan," and he goes, "Just a little ways outside of
Just a
Logan."
bit, just a bit, yeah.
So we kept going, and the further we went, I thought my eyes got bigger and bigger because there were fewer and fewer houses. Then we hit Cheryl Summers' house.
He had a pig farm
He
then.
had a hog farm.
Oh,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness!
smells so bad.
And this was in late spring, I think, and I thought, oh my goodness, where are we going?
Right.
But
That's
but when,
Yeah, if they passed, I'd bring little gals out, and it was that was pretty well a sifter. It would,
Weed out those.
yeah, it would be, yeah,
yeah,
Just
yeah.
go past the pig farm.
yeah.
And
So by
then
that time, had you dated enough that? I mean, obviously things worked out, but
We had dated enough that that I kept thinking about it, you know, when on my way back home, as he was taking me back to the dorm, and I thought, well, he's majoring in education. He's never going to live on a farm, so I'm okay. So,
I think you're right.
and for 38 years, we, you know, I mean,
Yeah, you were in the.
he was teaching, but he very gradually weaned me away from city because you know,
took a while, but now she's country.
Yeah.
And I remember when Well, we spent 20 years in Kansas,
Yeah.
and when we first moved to Manhattan, we bought a home in a neighborhood, and so it was just fine.
Right.
But we'd been there maybe 3 years, and then he says, "There's some land that I want to buy." So,
Right.
and it was only 3 miles out of town,
Yeah.
and so he says, "Let's build a home out there," and so he built a home out there, and I remember when we moved into it, I really felt uneasy because I was far away from everybody,
Right.
and it was like, if a stranger comes to the door, there's nobody around
Any
them.
neighbors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it took a little while, but then I found out it was really quite nice because the children played with each other instead of all the neighborhood
Yeah.
children.
Right.
And then it got to the point where he says, I'm gonna farm this land around us," because he bought 2 acres.
Okay.
And I says, "Well, as long as there are no animals, you can farm it." So he did. He farmed it, and he grew hay, and in the
Well, we
summer.
bought an additional
Yeah, then
30 acres.
then we
Oh,
bought.
really? Okay,
Yeah,
wow.
then we bought some
That
more
is a
land
good
around.
size, yeah.
So then we had 30 acres, and so he was farming it with what, hay, alfalfa,
It was
grass hay,
mostly
grass hay.
Yeah, but I
And he
needed a
came in.
tractor.
Yeah.
But he came in one hot summer day, and in Kansas it's very humid,
Yeah.
and sweat was pouring down his face, and hay leaves were stuck to his face. And he looked at me, and he walked in the kitchen, and he says, "Hay prices are really down." And he says, "I'm not doing all this work for nothing." He says, "I need some animals to feed it to." So see how he just gradually. So then we got some animals, and
Right.
and so it just went from there. Just
That's
to
awesome.
yeah. Then when we were transferred back to Utah 20 years later,
Yeah.
again we bought land and in Syracuse and had a few animals. And
Oh, okay.
then when he retired, then I realized I was really married to a farmer.
You were truly, yes.
Yes, because
Well,
that's what he does
I
for fun.
I bought her some. I thought I'm going to deck her out in to be a cowgirl, you know. And I bought her some Roper boots and
Yeah.
some real cute jeans and a Western shirt.
Yeah.
They're like new.
I think I've had him for what, maybe 20 years.
Yeah, we could
Yeah.
sell them on eBay for new. So the point is, I appreciate her, you know, going country, but
Yeah.
she'll only go so far. She won't
Not as
dress.
far as
She will
dressing
not
for-
dress country.
Oh, I love it. That is fantastic. Is this a picture of you?
Well, this
That's,
is.
you've got to tell
So
him
I
about school.
I got to
Because-
share with here.
He went to school here in Paradise.
Well, I moved up here when we were in the 6th grade.
Yes, right. 12. or something.
And we had a fairly large school, you know, grade school where we were down there in Granger.
Well,
we
that's
came
where
up
the
here.
fire station is.
No, I'm down in Granger,
Oh.
but when we moved up here, it was
yes.
just a 4-room school with 8 grades.
Wow.
And
And it was where the fire station is? That was the
yeah,
previous school?
they've demolished the school, but the fire station, where the fire station was the basketball
Jim?
gym
Okay, right.
for the school and for the church.
Wow, cool.
The church didn't have, you know, they didn't
Gym,
have
yeah.
that. And this is the class. This is the when I moved up, it was I was in 6th grade, so this is 5th and 6th grade
Oh, my goodness.
in here in Paradise.
Here in Paradise.
And
Look at these guys.
oh
That's just a gorgeous picture, too.
yeah,
And Gail Riggs is down there on the front row.
yeah.
Gail-
Well,
Gail Summers.
yeah. So many that are in our
Which
our
one will I
ward
know?
are there, and Leland G. Pulsifer was the teacher, and that's Guy Ray Pulsifer's dad,
That's Gail Riggs.
and
Okay.
Bishop Pulsifer's
Right
Bishop
there.
Pulsifer's grandfather was the teacher, and
There's Tom.
Yeah,
I found you. I love it. That is just really beautiful, man.
there were things that went on in school that I'm not really proud of, because our teacher Leland G. He would go to sleep sometimes, and
This guy right here.
yeah,
Oh, that's funny.
and
Good to see him again.
in the spring, when he'd wake up, in the meantime, everybody's jump out the window. He would wake up to an empty classroom.
Right.
I was not. I did not lead out in this.
But you followed.
I followed.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Bruce.
Steve Wolf. I was in 6th grade. Steve Wolf would have been in 7th grade. We're all in the same school,
Yeah, yeah.
and so Lisa Allen, her dad was the teacher of the 7th and 8th grade,
Okay, cool.
Mr. Bailey,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved the grade school experience here, and Mr. Bailey was good.
Yeah.
He was a good teacher, and I only had Mr. Pulsifer for 1 year, and everything was so new because I just moved here.
Right.
You know.
And to have everyone in the same school, that had to be pretty unique. So you're friends with
Everybody,
all the grades up too.
and I remember the big, huge, tall pine tree that's
Yeah.
by the fire station.
Yeah.
It was only about this tall, and we would run and jump over it. I remember that,
Yeah.
and no longer.
Right.
So
Jeez.
things have changed in that length of time.
Yeah.
So
That's pretty fantastic. So maybe one of the questions on here that I really like is chores. Sounds like you milked cows then, like when you were young.
yeah, we worked when we were in Granger. We milked cows by hand,
Wow.
and
When you moved up here.
when we moved up here,
did you
we
milk?
milked them by hand.
Yeah.
Right.
We only had 8 or 10 cows, and but down there, my dad didn't have a lot of money,
Mhm.
and we had old farm machinery, and we had a derrick. We did loose hay, and we had a dump rake. Then we did all our farming with a little Jeep,
Wow.
and pull type mower, a horse-drawn mower that was pulled behind the Jeep, and I'd sit on the mower, and it was a little 5-foot cut, and
Sheesh.
my mother would drive, or my dad, or else, and then I learned how to drive and would sit on a little stool.
Uh-huh.
I have very fond memories there, and I ran the Jackson Fork,
Yeah.
7, 8, 9 years old,
Wow.
and
That's really
we put up loose hay
cool. Mm-hmm.
and milked those cows, and
Sheesh, that is a lot.
so work was just expected, you just
Right.
did it,
Yeah, and there was no.
and
It was a
no.
necessity. So it
And
was just
when we
a-
moved up here, my dad was pretty frugal. Mom and dad both were very frugal, and he was gonna make a living on the farm, and he realized he couldn't do that. He'd had 2 years of university training at the University of Utah, and thankfully Utah State accepted that credit,
Oh,
and so he went back to school
wow.
with 8 of us children, and got his teaching certificate,
Mm-hmm.
and then he taught in Logan. And
At the high school or?
it was grade school.
Oh, okay.
It was grade school,
Yeah.
6th grade, was it?
6th grade. He
Yeah.
taught 6th grade.
Down on the island.
Oh, yeah.
He taught Merlin Olson's younger brothers, the Olson family.
Yeah.
But I want to share a memory or two, because when he was in school, we had very little money.
Mm-hmm.
The cows, we didn't have a big herd, and
Yeah.
we had food because we lived on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember whether, I think it was maybe our first, not our first, maybe it was our first Christmas here or our second, I don't know, but I know it was before my dad graduated and was teaching. Christmas was scarce.
Mm.
And, and in terms of money, our Grandpa Kruger, my mother's dad, he was German.
Mm-hmm.
He brought up some stuff, some presents,
Mm-hmm.
and it was Christmas Eve, and it was snowing. I remember that. And somebody knocked on the front door, and us children ran to the door,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a box. It had a turkey in it.
Mm-hmm.
It had oranges. It had candy and nuts. And
And you saw the taillights go.
we saw tail lights
Uh-huh.
go. That's all we saw, because there was snow. It was snowing,
Yeah.
and we were so excited.
Oh,
And we brought the box in, and we're so excited about what was in it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show. I said, Mom, come and look.
Yeah.
And I was, where's Mom? And so I ran around trying to find her because we were so excited. And her bedroom door was cracked open, and she was in praying in gratitude.
Yeah, that's sweet.
I'll always remember that.
Mm.
That was kind of the home that I was raised in, with an angel mother, and she had such faith.
Yeah.
With at times when we were sick. At any rate, there were some quiet miracles, and then my dad started teaching, and we got milkers and increased our herd, and
Oh yeah.
and then when I was after I'd come home from my mission,
Mm-hmm.
I tested cows to make a little money, and we got one guy that I tested cows for was going out of business, and he had a really nice tank and pipeline system, this state of the art at the time,
Right.
and he sold it to us. And so my dad and I can't remember, we brought that out and installed it, and it's still, it was
really?
used right to the end, that tank.
Right until last September.
Really?
Yeah.
Sheesh, that's
So the point is, we worked.
yeah.
We didn't have television.
Right.
There was no TV.
That's beautiful.
But my mom and dad saved their money and bought a piano.
Mm.
We played the piano.
Yeah.
Then they saved money and we bought a really nice record player.
Ooh yeah.
So we were kind of surrounded by beautiful music.
What a blessing.
It was a blessing.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I never did see Lone Ranger or Mickey Mouse or any of that.
Right. And look at you, you're fine. You're the
And I don't think-
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm a deprived. I don't think I was deprived as a child.
No.
No.
Wow. That Christmas story was fantastic too. That could have been out of a movie. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Susan, what about your chores growing up? Or
Yeah.
your-
How did you
Growing
learn to
up?
work? Because you're a hard worker.
Well, my mom taught me how to work, and I have 4 brothers but no sisters, and so and that was back in the day when the men did not do anything inside the house. And the
Right.
boys, they did the outside yard work and everything. And so I helped my mom, and I remembered washing dishes from the time I was about 7 years old. And every night, that was my job, was to wash dishes.
Wow.
And I used to have a lot of fun doing it. You get a lot of suds, and you can make really nice sodas, from one glass to another. and I enjoyed it so much that I often, in the spring and in the fall, when the days aren't as long as the summer, I would get really discouraged because it'd be dark by the time I was done with the dishes, and I couldn't go back outside to play. And now I look at the time and I think, man, we always ate at 6. So I'm thinking, I must have been doing dishes from 6:30 till 8.
Couple of hours.
Couple hours or
My
8:30.
goodness.
But
Yeah.
and I remember, mopping the kitchen floor and the bathroom floors from the time I was 10 years old on up, and vacuuming and just working hard with my mom, and
Right.
that's
Jeez.
how I learned to work.
So even in the city, they taught you to work too.
Yes,
Did you watch
Oh,
Lone Ranger though?
and-
Did you watch?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. My brothers and I, when we'd get home from school, we'd watch Mickey Mouse Club,
Uh-huh.
and then we'd watch Lone Ranger. We'd watch Leave It to Beaver. We
Oh,
just,
yeah.
that was what we did as a family, was
Yeah.
watch.
Oh, they'd
Good
Lawrence,
TV.
Lawrence Welk.
On Saturday
Oh,
night,
yeah.
my mom and dad, my mom and dad never watched TV with us,
Yeah.
except on Saturday night, and we'd watch Lawrence
Watch
Welk.
together.
And
Oh,
I
that's
knew
cool.
that I had to have all the vacuuming done on Saturday, well before dinner time, because I was in trouble with my dad if I had to vacuum when Lawrence Welk was on. so we'd all watch Lawrence Welk, and our baths would be done, so my mom would put up my hair while we were watching Lawrence Welk.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah,
That is
but
fun.
we did, as my brothers got older, when they got to be 10 and 9 and 11, something like that,
Yeah.
they had paper routes, and they had 4 paper routes between the two older brothers, and they did the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, the Chicago Daily News, and one more paper, but I can't remember the name of that.
Wow.
And so they delivered 2 routes in the morning. They each had a morning route, and they each had an afternoon route.
Wow.
So after school, they deliver those 2.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they got to be like in junior high, they didn't like collecting, but I loved to collect.
Oh,
And
wow.
people would pay a girl faster than they would pay the guys. And they would tip me quite well.
Oh, yeah.
And so I did all the collecting for my brother's 4 routes.
Jeez,
So yeah, that was fun.
that is fantastic.
So
Boy, is there anything else in that kind of childhood place that I'm excited to get to your marriage and courtship, and we hit it a titch. Because you met, sounds like you were at Utah
Well,
State.
yeah.
yeah, you're at Utah State.
She had been engaged before I came along.
Mm-hmm. She snuck out of that one.
Yeah, and I knew the guy she was engaged to. I had classes with him,
Yeah.
and I didn't consider him to be much of a macho guy. I mean, he was kind of like a nerd.
Yeah.
And I'm sharing this from a perspective of a college guy.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
And it was judgmental on my part, but that's just the way it was.
Right.
And I remember sitting in a German class once. I went on my mission to Germany, and so I could get some easy credit and do very well. And so I did. I majored in German
Oh, wow.
and education, and then minored in history. But at any rate, I was sitting in that German class, and I look over at him, and I think, here I'd been off my mission a couple of years, and no real prospects, and actually a little discouraged, frustrated.
Yeah.
And I looked over him and I thought, here this guy, he he has a cute little gal, and look at him, and I mean, and then look at me. I thought, what is this?
Right. There's no reason why.
No, it seemed to be so unfair.
Right.
And at any rate, then that was in the fall, and then and we were on quarters back then at Utah State,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the end of the winter quarter, which ended in March, and I'd done quite well in school. I think I'd all A's, but I was very depressed.
Yeah.
And I'd gone around and got my grades. There was no computer stuff then, and I was all alone, pretty much all alone on campus. And I went into the library. I remember, and went up to the third floor. Nobody was in the library. I mean, when school's over,
Right.
you couldn't study if you wanted to, and for the semester, for the quarter, and I just threw my books down and was just like sobbing because I was tired of being alone.
Right.
Now, a group of my friends, they wanted to start a fraternity. There was a new fraternity coming on, and I wasn't interested in that. And then at the beginning of the next, and so I wrote my feelings
Mm-hmm.
on that day,
Yeah.
and I put together a poem that kind of identified my frustration, my heartache, and kind of asked that the Lord would give me guidance and direction.
Mm-hmm.
And the beginning of the next quarter, I was registering, and I knew her because one of her roommates had asked me to a dorm formal that they had back then.
Mm.
And I had seen her and Norm, this other guy, and thought she was a cute little gal, but I thought, she's a little young. She was a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And
But this is a year later now.
Oh,
when
after he saw you first. Okay.
Yeah.
So you-
it was no. Yeah, after I first saw her, we're talking about the spring.
Yeah.
And
Right.
at any rate, I ran into her as we were registering for classes because I was starting my senior year and I needed certain credits, and there were, like I say, there was no computer stuff.
Yeah.
And there she was, standing behind me in line, and so I said,
thank you.
I said, so when you getting married? And she said, well, I'm not.
Oh,
And
nice.
And I could tell that she was kind of heartbroken about that.
Yeah.
And so I was registered for other classes, and there she was again, about 3 or 4 times as we were registering.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
She was right behind me, and then I thought, that's strange. Why is she always behind me? And I went over to the institute to register for institute, and good grief, there she was again. She came right in behind me, and I thought, so I dropped out of line. I went over. A bunch of my buddies were on the couch. I said, see that little gal over there? Yeah. I said, what do you think? Do you think she's cute? She said, yeah, she's all right. She's all right. I said, I think she's hustling me. I said, everywhere I've gone today, she's been behind me.
And Susan, do you remember that? Like the coincidence of being.
I remember
fighting
it.
a lot, or-
I remember, but you have to hear my side of the
Yes.
story.
Oh, yeah. Sweet. What? Yeah, you gotta tell.
So after I'd talked to my buddies, and they kind of gave approval, which was important back then, Her name was in my book
Oh yeah. Okay.
as a potential.
Right.
He honestly had a little black book filled with names and phone numbers of people to date.
Well organized. in his dating.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was typical at that time. That's
That's just what you did.
yeah,
Yeah.
the BMOC, which means big man on campus. They kept a book.
So what happened, Susan? Then,
Okay, so I had been engaged to this man for 5 months, and
oh wow.
and
Yeah.
anytime we talked about a wedding date, you know, we got engaged like in October of my sophomore year,
Yeah.
and we were going to get married in June when school ended.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I came back from Christmas break, because my parents were living in South Dakota by then,
Mm-hmm.
and so when I came back, then he says, "Oh, let's not get married till September, because I'm applying for grad school and I want to know where I'm going." And so I says, "Okay, that's fine." And that was like January, and then by the time February came, I was home on Friday nights and Saturday nights all the time because he was always working.
Wow.
And
That's bad.
and in fact, I got better grades that quarter than my whole 4 years of college.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember there was a really great concert coming, and he says, "I've got to work, but my roommate will take you to the concert."
Oh wow.
And I says, "No, that's okay. I'd rather study." And
Yeah.
then one night he took me to the movie, and it was The Sting, and then when it was over, it's where the Ellen Eccles Theater now is
Oh,
now.
yeah.
That was the movie house, and
Okay.
and then
Do you know
when
that
the
movie, The Sting? Robert Redford.
I've heard.
I haven't seen it. I need to see it though. Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that movie, he says we went for a ride to North Logan, and he stopped at a church, at the parking lot of a church, and he says, "I've got to tell you something," and he says, "We better not get married because I don't love you," and I says, "Definitely, I definitely think we should not get married."
Man.
And so it was the end of the quarter. It was the end of February, and I took my finals that next week, and then I went home to South Dakota for a few days till the next quarter started.
Yeah.
When I came back to register in the field house,
Yeah.
you had to pull these punch cards for your classes. And so I was going to these different lines to pull cards from the classes I wanted.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you did it alphabetically. And O, my maiden name starts with an O,
Oh.
follows N in the alphabet. So that is why I was behind him in every line he went to.
Right.
And it was okay to say hi the first time or two,
Right.
but after about the fourth or fifth time, it gets really kind of old
Right.
and
right.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
And he thought I was hustling him, but I was just alphabetically trying to get my cards for class. But then,
I think there was.
Some divine intervention.
I think there was a little bit
Divine
of a spark
intervention.
there, a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
well, I have to admit, a year before, when my roommate had him up to dinner before our dorm formal,
Yeah.
I did look at him and think, he's a good-looking man. He'd be a fun person to date if I weren't seriously interested
wasn't
in this other one.
Yeah.
Well, and then one class that I needed PE credit,
Mm-hmm.
and they had options, so you didn't need to necessarily, dress and go to the gym and whatever.
Right.
And one of them was a dance class. I thought, well, I'll just take a dance class. That satisfies my PE credit. But they were all closed except Latin American rhythms. And I thought, well, I'll just go ahead. I enjoyed dancing, so I thought, I'll register. I'll get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Get my PE credit done.
And I wanted ballroom dancing. That's what I really wanted.
Right.
But it was closed, and I ended up with Latin American
Oh, is that right?
So the
And
next day, I go to the ballroom in the student union where the class was supposed to be held.
Yeah.
There's this big note saying that it has been changed to another building. And there was one other person that walked up to read the note, and it was him.
And again, I thought, man, I said, so do you have this class too?
Yes, we were in the same lines.
I love it.
So we went over, and there were
We walked over
typically
together.
typically there were more gals in this class than guys,
Right.
and so the instructor, I still remember his name, Red Burnett. He was quite a guy. He now and then he'd say, "Okay, you gals on the side, go tap in,"
Oh, man.
and she would tap in.
Uh-huh.
And so I began to think, she is such a sweet little gal, and so I dated her.
Asked her out for the first time.
He did. He asked me out. And
Where did we go? We went to a
went to
concert?
there was a concert on campus.
I think it was. I can't remember. But at any rate, I thought it was on a Sunday, and that was. But
Probably
maybe-
not on a Sunday.
Probably not on a Sunday
like
because
a
I thought it was.
Friday or
I
Saturday
thought it
night.
was had something to do with Easter, and but
Choir concert.
I can't remember. But anyway,
It was like in March. It was the end of
and
March.
Okay. Yeah.
when-
we dated through.
Well, no, that was the end of March. We had one date. The next weekend was General Conference.
Oh, yeah.
And I really wanted to go down to General Conference. And I was living in a LDS dorm up there. And my dorm parents wanted me to meet one of their friends that was going to U of U. And they said he was a really nice guy and a returned missionary, and they really wanted me to meet him. And so they lined it up, and he lived in Salt Lake, and I was going to meet him and go to General Conference with him. And I told my roommates before I left, I said, because we had another dorm formal coming up every spring, so here's another formal coming up, and the girl had to ask the guy.
Yeah.
And I told my roommates, I says, I will know after this weekend whether I'm going to ask Tom to the dorm formal or whether I'll just have this guy from Salt Lake come up.
Oh.
Well, I wasn't, the guy in Salt Lake was a great guy, but it was like my big brother. It wasn't like a date.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
on the way home, I thought, I'm going to ask Tom to the dorm formal.
Uh-huh.
Well, I had one roommate who didn't hear me say that because she
Oh,
had
no.
left earlier because she had a brother that was getting married down in, she lived in Panguitch, and she was doing the reception for her brother and things. So she came back, and I says, Joyce, how was the wedding? Oh, it was great. And she had a boyfriend that was taking her to the mission reunion before conference. And she says, and I says, I says, how was the mission reunion? She says, it was great. Guess who I saw there? I says, who? Tom Nelson. I thought, oh, great. I mean, you only took somebody you were serious about to a mission reunion.
Oh,
I'd
right.
just been with him the week before.
Right.
Now he's at a mission reunion with somebody else, and I thought, I'm not asking him to this
Oh,
mission
right,
reunion or
right.
to this dorm formal. So, and on
Oh,
the
the
same
sad-
time, what were you thinking?
Well, the sad thing about it was my uncle lined me up
Oh.
with this gal, and she was. It was just like she expected we were going to get married. So she would hold on to me, and so some of my mission buddies would come. Yeah, we're really enjoying it, and I was just cringing. I thought I'm not interested, and so that was not a good experience.
Right, right.
But and it's true that when you take somebody to your mission reunion, a little gal, and you're not going to
pretty
bring him
serious.
unless you're thinking, hey, my missionary buddies,
Yeah.
this
right.
is my future wife type thing. At any rate, that was not a good evening. And then she didn't ask me
To the spring formal.
No.
to the spring
Darn it.
formal, so I figured, well, I guess that's the end of that.
Yeah.
And so it would have ended there, except then I had another roommate that had a history class with him. And she knew that I really wanted to date him some more.
So she told me, yeah,
So she kept telling Tom.
She says, why don't you just date Susan? And I said, well, I don't think she's interested. Because when I went with her, there was something really neat because she wouldn't, she wouldn't grab on to me or anything. She was very reserved, which I really appreciated and then when she didn't ask me, I thought, well, I guess she's just not interested, and so
Right.
I was gonna just leave it alone. But her roommate, she said, no, you ought to try it. I said, okay, I will. And so I think I asked her to a Hawaiian luau type thing.
Nice.
And I've got to hurry through this because it's taken way too long.
Yeah. So by now it's the middle of May. So
Yeah.
the first date was the end of
But I
March.
gotta
then
just
the
share this.
second date was the middle of May.
I just got to share this one thing with you because I thought, she said she would go. And I thought, she's such a little thing. And I really like to eat. And at these luau's, they have these piles of food.
Yeah.
And I'll want to go back a couple times, and I know she won't. So I ate before I went, and because I, worked hard.
On the other hand, my roommate said, now the guy's paying for your food, so you've got to eat a lot to impress him.
Right.
So I didn't eat all day long. I was starved.
So I go through and get my plate of food, and she gets a pretty good portion. We go back and eat. She says, I'd really like to go back for some more. Wow.
I think that's
What
the
is
only,
this?
that's
What
the
is
only
this thing
time, the only time in my entire life I've eaten more at one meal than he
I
has.
thought, this little gal can put it away. At any rate, after that, we got engaged in June and we're married.
The end of June, yes.
We got engaged the end of
After that
June,
second date.
Yeah.
and then we were sealed.
Yeah.
We were married in September,
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
and it's been a wonderful thing.
And since we were going to school, we'd see each other every day, so
Yeah.
it sounds fast, but we knew where to meet at what time after
Right.
which class. And
You didn't
Yeah,
have Lonely Fridays anymore. You didn't leave. You
no
hanging
more
on
lonely
Saturdays.
Fridays, Saturdays.
yeah. So
That's
we've
good.
taken too long.
Yeah, we
So
have.
Oh no. That's
if you want
beautiful.
a closing question or whatever.
Oh my goodness. There's.
There's just so much.
I know. How about one of your? Let's do one of your happiest memories. As. I don't know. Should we do as a couple and as a family maybe?
Maybe
Just whatever.
newlyweds.
Just some happy memories. Just some happy family things you want to
Happy
remember.
memories.
Yeah.
This time of our life has some of the happiest moments in it. Now, when we had our children,
Yeah.
they were precious. And as I saw you tonight with your little children, I remember the time when you could grab your little children and just hug them, and it was just, and put them in bed.
Yeah.
Those are precious times. But for us, right now is a very choice time.
Yeah.
We're together all the time.
Yeah.
We share as we go to the temple. We work in the temple and we're together. We make a commitment to date regularly. I like to have her be in charge of that, whatever it is she wants to do.
Yeah.
We go places together. I went down to get a plow the other day, and I said, "Sweetheart, why don't you just come go with me?"
Yeah.
She says, "Okay." And so I'm grateful we went together.
Yeah.
Coming home, we do simple things that just mean a lot to us.
Right.
So we stop and get an ice cream cone at the Chevron down in Ogden, where they, for $1, they give you this great big ice cream cone. You know, the simpler things
Yeah.
become cherished.
Yes.
To be together,
Right.
to work together. She helps me with the hay. She'll drive the truck and haul hay. And for us, this chapter of our life
Yeah.
has been very precious. We served a mission together.
Yeah.
We were together all the time. That was somewhat of a challenge because I had just retired, and I had always, up to this point in my life, I had what I needed to do, and she had what she needed to do with the children in the home. We shared in that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we were thrown together, and I was packing my suitcase, and she was saying, "No, you don't do it that way." and I was shoving things, and I said, "Wait,"
What do you mean?
because I can do this myself. and we found out that we had to compromise
Yeah.
because we were together all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so that began our mission, where we were together.
Yeah.
Began a very choice time of our life.
Growing together again.
We've
Right,
grown.
Yeah.
We've grown together.
Yeah. That is beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Did
one
I say
great
that
thing
right?
too, because you can look forward to, because you know you worry. I don't know. I'm always like, oh no, this time's gonna go and I'm gonna miss it so bad. But every phase has its own beauty. Yeah.
It does.
Every
It
one.
does.
Yeah.
Like he was talking about when we had children. For me, those are some of my happiest memories when they were little and
Oh man.
when you could hold them and things. And I just have
Oh, yeah.
a
Let's
couple
see
of,
that one.
well, family traditions.
Oh yeah.
We
yeah.
had a family tradition of Christmas caroling. And
Oh.
it started out, and you can just look at those pictures.
Oh my goodness.
That's an old banjo that Tom found
That
when
is
he was
fantastic.
a garbage collector.
Oh, I love it.
when we were
Oh, and here's
had
the
only been
family.
married a few years, but every year we'd take that old banjo and we would go Christmas caroling. And throughout the years, it just
That is fun.
that's something we always did as a family, and they loved it. And
Here's another family photo for you
yeah,
guys.
just when our children
this
were
one.
young. Well, wait, that's the last one. I've got.
Show our wedding picture.
Oh yeah.
See how
Yes.
beautiful. My
Let's
wife
see.
is just absolutely beautiful.
Oh my goodness.
Well, look how
at this
handsome-
stunning.
Look
photo.
how handsome my
Stop.
husband was.
Look at those babies. You guys were so. Were you like 19 years old? Were you
I
guys?
was 20 and he was 23.
Boy, howdy.
Yeah.
I love that. That is so wonderful.
It was the beginning of my
Sheesh.
junior year and the beginning of his senior year when we
Okay.
got married. So that first year we were both in school together, and then the next year I kept going to finish while he started teaching.
Right.
But
Well,
having
show me
our
some more.
children.
Yeah, send these up here.
Okay, so
These are good.
there's some of the pictures of our children
Oh,
through
my
the
God.
years as they just grew and increased,
I love it.
and that's
This was
what
an earlier one.
that's what's
I love that one.
Which one?
This is of the two of them.
Oh yeah.
So sweet.
and by
That is
then
so
that
sweet.
was 1980 because that was Valentine's, and our 6th child was born in May, and I was
Oh, okay.
pregnant in that picture. So
Yeah.
so that was
We didn't even. So how many children then? It's a total of.
okay. We have 9 children. There's 8 children in that picture.
Okay.
and then 2 years later, that was taken in 1987. This one's 1989. when our
When
youngest
they're
child
all
was
there,
born.
including.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah,
actually the
baby.
only picture we have, and that was taken in a hospital.
Oh
Was it
my
really?
goodness!
Because
wow.
our oldest son, when he was 15 and a half, got really sick. And then they
Yes.
diagnosed him with acute
Lymphoblastic.
lymphoblastic leukemia. My tongue's
Yeah.
tied. And he was on chemotherapy for
Yeah,
22
he was very
months.
sick. That's about
So he's
that's
there in
about
the chair.
that's
Yeah,
about a
so-
month before he passed away.
Is it
Yeah.
really?
We're so grateful. We're so
Yes.
very grateful that we got that picture
You got
because
it.
that's the only one we have of all of them. Because our youngest son was just born.
And
Yeah.
and our youngest son was, I was over at Kansas City at the KU Med Center with our son when he was sick, and so whenever we had to leave Manhattan and go over to Kansas City, which would be like going from here down to Salt Lake, and it took us about 2 hours and 15 minutes to get to the hospital. I always took the baby with me, and then when we had to stay in the hospital for extended periods of time, I would stay at the Ronald McDonald House, and then I'd have the baby with me, and I could always tell how Wayne is the name of our oldest son.
Yeah.
I could tell how Wayne was feeling, because if he was feeling pretty good, he'd say, "Put the baby on my lap," and he would prop up his legs. He'd put the hospital bed, the back up, and he'd prop his legs up, and he'd lay the baby on his legs and just play with the baby. If he wasn't feeling very well, he'd say, "Move the infant seat over here so I can see him." And then infant seat was kind of like what a car seat is for a baby now,
Yeah.
only not padded and nice like they are.
Right.
And so I just moved over and he could watch the baby. And so
Oh,
there was
jeez.
a real bond between him and his youngest brother.
Yeah.
And so
So that was a difficult time.
Oh man. How old
but-
was he?
he was 17 when he passed away. He was
Okay.
What is he in this picture?
he's 15 and a half in here, and
In
this was
picture?
just
And that's
2
him
months before.
Just before you found
Just
out.
2 months. This was November, and it was February, 3 months later, when he
That
got
he
sick.
was- That he
Yeah.
was in the hospital.
He was sick in January, and it took about 3 weeks for him to diagnose it, because some of my other children had had strep. So the doctor just says, "Oh, he's got strep," so we'd give him medication, and once the antibiotic was over, then he thought he was well, but then he'd get sick again.
So it was a very, very difficult time because she got pretty sick with in her pregnancy and got dehydrated. So she was in a hospital,
Oh.
and our
And
son,
your son's
Just for a
going
few,
through that.
yeah.
yeah, was in the hospital, and then she delivered our youngest about the time that our oldest, it was diagnosed that there was nothing else they could do.
Oh.
And so we had one coming into our family and one leaving. And the irony of all of that,
It's like we were working as hard as we could
uh,
to keep one from
and-
leaving,
and-
and working hard to try and get the other one
And
here.
you talk about sacred moments. Looking back on it, we realize we didn't lose a son, we gained one. So we wondered why, because we thought because she was having problems with clotting, thought we hadn't better have any more children. We have 8, and that's a good family.
Right.
And then she was pregnant during the time that our son was in the hospital, in and out with chemotherapy.
Right.
And I thought, how are we ever going to do this? What?
And he was working on his PhD.
Yeah, and
at
I
the
was
same time.
trying to, and I was working full time
Oh.
And going to school.
and going to school, and
Oh.
but you talk about sacred times
Mm.
when you feel the arms of the Savior
Mm.
around you.
Yes.
That was one of the most precious.
Mm.
It was.
We wanted our son so much to live. And I thought, if I have the faith, he can be healed. And when he wasn't healed, I began to have this, I must not have sufficient faith.
Yeah. Mm.
But I've since learned, and the brethren have helped us understand, do you have the faith for him not to be healed?
Right.
And when I finally let God prevail, you know, as you said tonight, when I finally said, Father, whatever,
Yeah.
there was peace.
Mm.
Whatever it is. And I was in Ronald McDonald House during that challenging time, and there just came peace over me, and I slept.
Mm.
And knowing that he was going to go.
Right. Mm.
So that was probably one of the most sacred times, and it came out of
And
adversity.
we learned a lot of lessons from him.
A lot.
Right.
That son had a lot of faith. And it's really interesting because as a little child, he was so active and he would just wander off and go visit neighbors when we moved to Kansas. When we moved to Kansas to begin with, he was only 5.
Yeah.
And I'd lose him, like right away. And we'd hunt for him and he'd be 5 houses down the street, down the backyards, between the backyards.
Oh,
and
wow.
and talking to a man who was gardening, you know, and son, what are you doing? I'm just getting to know the neighbor, you know,
Right.
and I thought, oh, if I can just get him raised, and yet I thought if I can just get him on his mission,
Yeah.
we'll be all right, you know, and I had he has an older sister, our oldest child's a girl.
Yeah.
And she was always perfect, did everything right. And so I never worried about her. And yet, during those couple of years that he had cancer,
Yeah.
she was a senior in high school and a freshman in college, and she just turned the other way. So the child I thought was right on track, and the one I was worried about, it just switched.
Wow.
And
But-
just swapped, and it was like I felt unworthy toward my Heavenly Father because I had failed in raising my oldest one.
Oh.
And so I felt like I couldn't pray, but on the other hand, I needed to pray. I had to pray
Yeah.
because I was trying to help the next child
Right.
stay in life. And so I just learned a lot. It was like a
So-
lot of blessings came
Right.
out of it.
Yeah.
A lot of
A lot of
and
trials.
what I keep holding in my heart is remembering how brave he was going through that chemotherapy and how difficult that was on him. But he never complained, and he always had his mission as a goal.
Yeah.
And even when he'd have a relapse and they'd start a whole new thing of a protocol of chemo,
Yeah.
he'd say, Mom, it'll take me a little longer till I go on my mission, but I'm going to make it, you know. And I think if I can have that kind of faith clear to the end, endure to the end, regardless of what challenges I might have.
Yeah.
My wife, just one last thing on that. Well, when you were going to, he had a, one side of his face all of a sudden got paralyzed.
Yeah.
And he was going over there to take him over to the hospital. And as we were going, he turned to his mother. We hadn't even reached Topeka. We weren't even halfway there. And he says, Mom, he says, I just want to go home. So she slowed down
I was going to take the next exit off the interstate.
to go home.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "No, Mom, home."
Oh.
And so that's always
And he knew
given
then
me a lot of
that
peace.
he was going on his mission.
On the other side.
On the other side, gathering Israel on the other
And
side.
I had the
of the river.
opportunity, and I had the opportunity to be endowed for him
Oh, wow.
in the Denver temple
And that was
just a
special.
few months after he passed away.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and that was really special because we left Kansas and drove to Denver to the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were there, they asked us to be the witness
Witness.
couple.
Oh, yeah.
And we could feel him right there between us. It
Oh,
was-
And in order to do that, generally you wait a year, but the temple department told us no. If his bishop will just write stating that he's worthy, you can go the next day after his
Oh,
death,
really?
and he can be endowed. Well, we had this new little baby, and we had to wait a month or two,
We
Yes.
waited
And
till
then-
March, till the baby was
and
big
then
enough.
we went and I had the opportunity. So what a precious experience.
Yeah. Sounds like a defining moment, something
Very defining.
really hard,
We
but
learned
really important thing.
out of much tribulation come the blessings.
Right.
We learned that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't ever want something like that. It's the worst, right? You just definitely don't want it, but then you grow so much. You're
Yeah.
so blessed by
Yeah.
it.
And
you
yet,
do.
and the Lord stands by His word. We will all have our challenges,
Yeah.
but we know that that's true. That tribulation in righteousness brings
blessings.
blessings.
Yeah. Yeah, and we didn't come here to just have like a cozy, nice experience. We came here to become something, and those things are the
Yeah.
things that help you become.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sheesh.
So we've taken
That's
more
fantastic.
than our share of fears.
There's so
For
I
sure.
know you're such an interesting couple. We could just keep going. But,
I have to.
No.
I have to tell you though. This is our Nathan.
oh yes.
We have a
Oh,
Nathan.
you're so-
Yeah.
man.
This is our what?
Yeah,
What is
Nathan. We have a Nathan.
And Nate,
Yeah.
do you call him Nate too?
No.
No,
He's Nathan.
Yeah, I've always
Here's
called
Nate.
him
I'll
Nate.
show you guys.
Now his brothers
Nate's
call him
in the middle
Nate,
right here.
Yeah, his brothers call him Nate.
Oh,
Nate
okay.
or NATO.
Yeah. What a beautiful family. Sheesh.
Yeah.
9 kids. I love it.
5 sons and 4 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
We're really blessed.
Yeah.
Greatly blessed.
Well, thank you too. That was
Well, thank
just
you.
it was really nice.
Yeah.
If anybody watches this to the end, they will have endured.
Endured valiantly.
It will.
No, I think it was great. So, okay, thank you very much.